Let's bring in Jordan Horrobin of NorthStar Bets. It's been a while, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. It's good to see you. So, listen, I made a little prediction here at the homestand that this weekend against the A's, finally, it's going to be the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. breakout weekend. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. I mean, you're talking about him breaking out against the worst team in baseball. That seems pretty reasonable. And
Exactly.
gosh,
It's not that
it'd be
bad
a
of a
great
prediction,
time.
right?
It'd
So,
be a
yeah,
great
you wrote an
time.
article up on NorthStarBets.ca and you talked about some Blue Jays betting trends and you focused in on Vladdy. So there's some good and there's some bad. Let's start with the bad and then let's get to the good. So my prediction sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I always like to start with the bad, get that out of the
Yes.
way, and then circle back to some good. So the bad is that Vladdy really has been struggling quite a bit recently, and obviously his numbers are way down from what we saw from that magical 2021 season, but they're also down from last year as well. The way that I sort of contextualized it was he has a 116 weighted runs created plus this year, which is below guys like Brandon Drury, Spencer Steer, Lane Thomas. If any of those are guys you've never heard of, that kind of proves my point. And it's a situation where he's performing fine by league average standards, but we don't hold him to a league average standard. So he's somebody that the Jays really need to get going. And, he needs to elevate his game by elevating the ball in the air. It's a simple thing. We've been talking about this kind of since he's entered the league, his ground ball rate. And it's something that is a factor. Again, it's come up right now.
Jordan, you in that same article, you mentioned that the Jays have a 7-17 record against the AL East and 34-18 against everybody else. Their next 10 series, they only have one AL East opponent. How big is this next stretch for the Jays to make up ground and get back into not the division chase, but really solidify their playoff positioning?
Well, it's probably from their standpoint a little early to be doing too much watching of the standings, but of course it's something that we can pay attention to as much as we like. But now, since they're not playing a lot of AL East teams in this next lengthy stretch here, it'll make sense to pay attention to kind of what the Rays are doing, what the Orioles are doing, because the Jays can't directly make up ground by facing those teams and beating them. So it's a matter of, again, trying to take advantage of some games out of the division and, make up some ground and bank some wins that way. But you're not able to do it by directly handing a loss to the Rays, Yankees, Orioles, etc.
This is a great time. I think, well, I should probably say it this way. It's always a great time to play the Oakland Athletics. They're not a good team, horrible pitching. I think it's just over 6 ERA in terms of team pitching. So you would think that the Jays bats, this is a great time to really get going. Have you seen anything lately that is telling you that these hitters, these batters are trending in the right direction?
Well, I totally snubbed you on the good news for Vlad. So let's circle back to that. Let's circle back to that. I'll work him into this here. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good news here with the Jays. I mean, again, it's still a team from a batting average standpoint that is one of the highest in the league. They're not one of the highest in the league with runners in scoring position. They're a little below league average there. And that's the type of thing that always stands out, right? Because a team like Texas, for example, just always seems to be getting the hits at the right times. Happened a little bit against the Jays. It's been happening against the whole league. So that's a big thing, I think, for Toronto is just kind of more timely hitting. Hitting in general, they're doing fine, and they're hitting the ball really hard. And Vladdy is at the center of that. So that was the good news with Vladdy, is that although he's not elevating the ball too much, he's still hitting the ball very hard. Seems like such a simple thing to say of just get the ball in the air a little more often, but obviously there's a lot on a hitter's mind in every single at-bat, and I think generally his approach and starting with really solid contact is kind of where it has to begin. And from there, hopefully few more balls in the air.
Yes. Cool.
What do you make of Kevin Kiermaier's play of late? He's only batting 146, I believe, since the end of May. Is this just a bad stretch for him, or we should be more concerned about what's going on with him?
I mean, I don't think he's someone that, generally speaking, we should expect a lot out of offensively. So earlier in the season, when he was, he had a lengthy stretch of batting over 300, that's a really nice plus. And in my opinion, that's a really nice surprise. I don't think as a 9 hitter, that's what you should be expecting. His glove is fantastic. It will absolutely keep him in the lineup a lot of nights. And he's a great guy to come in for a defensive replacement. Obviously, if he's not even starting in a game, he's at any night you could see him do something spectacular with the glove. It's not going to happen nearly as often with the bat, but it's a trade-off that I think you should be willing to make from a number 9 hitter. A 146 batting average since the end of May, as you said, that's not. He's going to have to be a little better than that. But again, the glove is the plus here.
Yeah, he also has an injury history as well, Jordan. Do the Jays have to start considering maybe giving him more days off to save his body for the remainder of the regular season?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's, again, he's a guy who, when they signed him, I think I was lower on him than maybe a lot of other people because he does bring a great clubhouse presence, but he has that injury history. He's getting older, aren't we all? And I think it's a situation where you do need to be cognizant of if this is going to be a team that's pushing for the playoffs, how do you maybe work him in a little bit less, get him off his feet a little bit more? And maybe that comes by having him be that defensive replacement. Maybe he plays, sometimes just seventh inning onward or whatever it is, kind of later on to take advantage of the glove more so than the bat.
Jordan, so we posed a question. I think it was last week on the show. It was like a keep or fire type segment we did on John Schneider because he's taken a ton of heat online. I'm against firing him. I think that's just a bad idea. It's not his fault. A lot of these things are happening, my opinion. But if I put you in Ross Atkins' shoes, what are your thoughts on John Schneider so far?
I mean, as someone who is just tragically online way too much, I have to start by saying that Twitter is just a remarkable little echo chamber that we live in. And
Yes.
So the amount of buzz of online of people kind of calling for Schneider's head, I think percentage wise for the world of Blue Jays fans out there is probably still relatively low. Unfortunately, it's a pretty loud group on Twitter. But if I was Ross Atkins, no, I would not be firing John Schneider right now. I think he came in last season and did a great job mid-season trying to figure it out. And this is his first full term to kind of have a go at it with the Blue Jays. So I think we have to see how this goes a little bit longer. I think we need to give him a little more rope and understand also, again, they're in a historically great division right now. It's not an excuse you want to be using all year long. But again, it's a situation that he's trying to work through. Let's give him a little more time to do that.
Yeah, and you can't blame him for the Manoah situation. You can't blame him for Vladdy not being able to hit the ball as well as he's used to been hitting it. So anyway, that's enough of John Schneider. Let's talk about Chris Bassett. He gets the ball today. So right now, based on this rotation with Manoah down and the lack of depth, really, when it comes to starting pitching, they cannot have any passengers. And over the past two starts for Chris Bassett, he hasn't been great, hasn't been able to get out of the third inning. Is there a huge cause for concern here, or is it just a couple of games where Bassett just didn't have it?
He's been really up and down all year. So honestly, it's kind of hard to know what you're going to get out of Chris Bassett. I mean, I know there's at least once this year where I had written a piece for NorthStar Bets where I was fading him in one or more ways. And then he came out and threw 8 strong innings or something. Like, he has that in him, obviously. We've seen it. But he also has a capability of just letting everything unravel. And we've seen that quite a bit too. So I think when you look at what he's done recently, yes, we could chalk it up to being a couple of rough starts, but he needs to not stack those together, right? I mean, it's been sort of a back and forth, some really great stuff, some really poor outings. And if we start to see 3-4 in a row of kind of rough stuff here, that is going to be concerning. So I think, again, you look at a matchup against the A's, call it a revenge game if you want as a former Oakland pitcher.
Right.
And this is a time where we're going to need to see Bassett really shove.
All right, so they got a 9-game homestand that kicks off tonight. Got the A's, San Francisco, and Boston. They're coming off a 9-game road trip where they went 4-5. Surprisingly, went 4-5. Thankfully, winning 2 games in Miami. A successful road trip for the Jays would be what?
Successful homestand for the Jays
homestand, yes.
Would probably be winning all 3 of these series. And you don't, I mean, even if you don't sweep the A's, that would be a great place to start. But if you don't sweep the A's, I think you still have to come out 2-1 against those other 2 teams. And that's how I'd look at it. I mean, again, we talked about the AL East, how tough it is. So when you're playing anybody who's not in the AL East, you're going to need to bank some wins.
Yeah, absolutely. 6-3 would be nice, I think, for the Jays.
That's what I said, 6-3.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're going 6-3?
6-3.
All right. Jordan, you're the best, man. Thanks for doing this.
Cheers, guys.
All right, take care. That's Jordan Horrobin of NorthStar Bets. So, yeah, the Jays kick it off tonight. Chris Bassett getting the ball.